It's been quite a while since I updated people on the glowworm rearing project, and so I've garnered a lot of information to share with all of you. So, I have been collecting snails, and I've been trying to collect the smallest baby snails mostly, but I've also just collected some sort of average adult snails. I have a few banded snails, which are the priority to find in gardens. So they're the ones that are usually particularly stripy, that have quite clear bands to their shell. But also, I've just been collecting general garden snails that have a more sort of darker browny, almost tortoise shell colour to them, but they are not really the priority. Unfortunately, as I've been keeping the snails in the tank, for the first few days and even the first week that I had them in there, they were doing rather well. However, it seems that, as you can tell on the shells, we're starting to get these white little speckles come up on the adults. And also, the baby ones, it's starting to appear that their shells are actually way more fragile than when I found them. Now, most likely, this is because of some kind of calcium deficiency. The shells aren't just made of calcium, so it could also be a deficiency in things like nitrates and things like that. Now, after talking to a friend at the Bournemouth Natural Sciences Society, I was advised to put eggshells and species of the cabbage sort of family in terms of plants into the box. Because the heath soil and the peat doesn't actually contain as much of the nutrients that your normal garden or banded snail would need to grow its shell, as it is more acidic. So essentially what I'm trying to do is get a hold of material that snails will eat, which will help with their general well-being, but also the growth of their shell. I wasn't just advised to put in things like species from the cabbage family or eggshells. I was even told that an actual limestone piece or a piece of concrete could work just as well for the snails. What's very interesting about the way that the snails feed is that they don't just have a mouth like you and I, they have a particular organ, which I'll show up on the screen now, where they can actually sort of gnaw at things as hard as rock or stone in order to achieve the nutrients that they need for their growth. Which is very interesting, which I wouldn't have realised before. Now I'm going to talk about actually acquiring the snails. So acquiring the snails has been difficult, not because obviously snails are abundant in a garden, but actually finding baby snails is very challenging. Now, when I find them, if I'm lucky, I haven't found very many, but the youngest snails are barely half a centimetre. And even the ones which are a little bit larger are still okay to find, but it really is the baby snails which I'd like to be able to find first. This is because as soon as the glowworms hatch as larvae, I want them to undergo not too much of a challenge to actually be able to hunt and eat the snails which they're looking to obviously use for sustenance. So what I want to do is to be able to keep, if I was lucky, a constant supply of these baby snails for the glowworms to eat. So I do have some baby snails which are being kept in the box and are being reared. It's just the trouble of the nutrients which I have to solve now. The main way I realised that the snails were suffering from a lack of nutrients, apart from the baby snails having very weak shells, was more the fact that I could see the speckles on the snail shells of the adults. Now the speckles are generally mottled and white, and I knew that was an issue because when I was looking around for live snails in my garden, I would come across a lot of empty snail shells, and almost all of those are a very bright sort of ivory white colour, which seems that they're going through their decaying process, as obviously there's no live snail in them. So a lot of these things to do with the snails were obviously not expected, but are kind of understandable considering what I'm trying to take on and my novice experience beforehand. However, something which has really shocked me is the fact that the glowworms, I was thinking I could put off the idea of going to find them until around mid-July. But actually, I have to go now. You see, the weather has been so unusual this year, and obviously there's an incremental warming of the weather over the last years anyway. There's a chance that the glowworms may already be going through the mating season as we speak, or in fact it may have even finished. You see, obviously, as the person at the Natural Sciences Society said, insects don't read books, so they don't really care about when we decide their year, their mating rituals, or their growth changes. So basically, I need to go out there as soon as possible and look for the female glowworm and the male glowworm. Now, hopefully, it all goes to plan. If it turns out I've been too late for the whole thing, well, that could be this whole project's over, really, and I'll just have to make a video about the mistakes and the issues without having any glowworms to show you. It could be possible. I really hope it isn't, of course. So, I will be going up to Sopley Heath with this person from the society, and we're going to do our best to actually acquire the glowworms.
Probably don't light up until it's actually convenient for those. They haven't got a sting.
No.
Some ants have a proper sting, like a wasp, but these don't. But what they do is if they get hold of you, they bite you, which makes a little hole, and then they spray acid into it, so it feels like a sting.
Yeah. I'll
That's
have
all
to be
it's the same
careful.
effect as a sting, yeah. Lovely ants. They're quite complicated life cycles as well. It's one of the few species that can have multiple queens,
Yeah.
and they also have multiple nests sometimes. So you'll have a core nest, and then you'll have other nests some distance away which still have some connections to the original one.
Wow.
They're all genetically connected, so they're probably... These match the bark of pine perfectly, as is often the case with moths. I didn't expect that lucky a find tonight, wasn't it?